She sketches a little.
Sketches? Well, not this modern stuff, I hope. You know, portrait of a lampshade upside down to represent a soul in torment. Don't sail, do you?
No, I don't.
Thank goodness for that.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. So today I'm joined by Dmytro Gazda, who is the founder and CEO of Esper Bionics. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me here.
So you are a trained medical doctor, but instead of pursuing medicine, you decided to at some point start furniture as well as textile companies. And I wonder why that's the case.
Yeah. So that's... I have a lot of interests, and medical field was delighting for me as intersection of science fields like physiology, physics, chemistry, and etc. And that was great journey as a school about life itself. When you see a lot of lives, cases, see a lot of dramatic moments and or happy, satisfying moments, and see how deep can be the life and how different are people. And so that was a school about life itself, how precious and wonder it is, and different, absolutely different question, like to that's a medical system itself, and I don't like many things about it, and I was lucky to try entrepreneurship, being a student as parallel hobby, and I found out that also can be leverage and the way to help people and change lives. And I was lucky to build successful companies. And I'm still a bit in medical field. I'm not a practical doctor, but I do. We develop medical devices, and and also sometimes I assist in surgical operations as a hobby. So that's it. Somehow I continue all that medical journey. That's it with Esper Bionics.
So I suspect that behind your words, there's just a lot of context that we are, of course, lacking. But I think what I did take away is certainly the technical training has been incredibly valuable. But when it comes to science, I think you're focusing on something that's quite interesting, which is in the actual formation of science applications, there is this other dimensions of aesthetics, visceral experiences, as well as the design and creative aspects, which I think starts to come together in the current venture that you're working on. So to that end, maybe we could go back to the genesis of how you got started. I believe you were in an exchange program to Finland to assist in some surgical operations when you were inspired by some work regarding prosthetics. So if you could just kind of explain that would be helpful.
Oh, that I didn't know you knew that actually. Yeah, there was a case. It was kind kind of trigger for the final choice to which way should go Esper Bionics. So that was like 15 years ago. I was assisting as on a surgical theater, and we've got very urgent case. The girl lost her hand in a car accident, and after the operation, I found out that she was. I'm from Ukraine, and she was also from Ukraine. And we've become kind of friends, like, and I was shocked a lot about how brave she is, and her life changed so much, and how she got it. Like I was shocked about her reactions, and how there was nothing dramatic for her, and that was wow. And when I came back to Ukraine, I've tried to find her, and there were no social networks. Like, at least I haven't used it, and I failed to find her. And like 3 years ago, when we with team were deciding how to get expertise in implant sensors, we've Facebook shown her to me as that can be your friend, and I've started her case, and yes, like that was a wow moment for me. Puzzle solved. See, like one more thing I should also to make you better understand was what I was looking for 3 years ago. Like we believe and we bet that the biggest impact on humanity will have implanted electronics, and we were trying to find the way to get the biggest expertise in implants sensors. That's a core technology from implanted devices, and we found out that the birthplace of that technologies will be the prosthetic industry, because it's the only niche that will have millions of users of big external hardware devices that are worn daily by life-changing needs. And that devices are great for charging data, receiving data, processing from implanted electronics. And therefore, we've started to transform the industry and bringing here the needed big external devices and making the industry data collective. And one of triggers and one of accidents that helped us to find that way was the case with the girl. Yes, that's it.
So I think you've already started to describe your company, Esper Bionics, in terms of what you guys are doing around the myoelectric hand prosthesis. But just to kind of give a little bit of context for those listeners as it pertains to Ukraine, the patient that you're referring to is also Ukrainian. Cost of some of these prosthetics could cost upwards of, let's say, $60,000 USD. But the average worker's salary in Ukraine is maybe around $420 USD. So there's a huge discrepancy in terms of what they can actually afford. And even in the higher end of these prosthetic arms, there's still a lot of questions or issues around function, convenience, and just adaptability to various, anatomical aspects. So how are you guys specifically addressing that? You may also like our quarterly Astor Perkins event that brings some of the most notable experts and category-leading startups in their area of sustainability and human survival on Earth and in space. To register, visit astorperkins.com/events.
So we are a US-based company with headquarters in New York, but main R&D facilities are in Ukraine, Kyiv. And yeah, that's we have developed already the products, the robotic prosthetic hand, and the software platform which will connect robotic prosthesis to improve controllability. And that system for prosthetic industry, it is already 3 times faster in controls than other products on the market. And better controllability relies on software advantage and some electronic advantage. And it is based on prediction of user behavior. The hand help to choose the right grip in advance. And it is based on better detection of muscle activity. So all multifunctional hands mainly are controlled right now by muscle sensors on the skin surface that are located on the skin surface. And our muscle sensors, they just detect more. They can more precisely detect muscle activity. We can detect activation of exact muscles when other detect activation of groups of muscles. So more, we can give more different commands to control the hand.
There's a lot there that we need to explore, because when you think about, let's say, more the legacy prosthetics players, right? So you have a limb, at the end of a limb, you have groups of muscles that's exposed. And it's those groups of muscles that are communicating with these prosthetics. Can you go into a little bit more detail around how that works depending on someone's amputation? So in other words, it's one thing if they have, let's say, for example, still the upper arm, meaning kind of above the elbow, versus let's say they've lost their hand and they have most of their forearm, for instance, or those that have maybe up to the shoulder only. Those muscle groups are going to be very different, but are you able to trace back? So even at, let's say, at the shoulder level, would your sensors be able to actually trace back to the potential ligaments that would have connected to the rest of the arms and be able to actually control out the robotic arm, essentially?
We are building external part of architecture. So developing and function usage of implanted electronics relies on architectures that can get data from that electronics, can charge that electronics, can process the data from that electronics. And that there is implanted part of architecture and external part of architecture. And we have started from the prosthetic industry because it's the biggest niche with users of big external hardware devices. Mm-hmm. And what we are developing right now is external part of architecture. There is no need right now to develop internal part of architecture and implants itself till we don't have at least 1,000 of users of our external architecture. And right now, our robotic hands are controlled fully by external on-surface muscle sensors. And our muscle sensors, due to software advantage and some electronical advantage, they detect, can detect activation of exact muscles in forearm or shoulder. Other control systems mainly detect activation or big groups of muscles or smaller groups of muscles. That's it. So that's the difference. Main control systems right now in the world of multifunctional robotic hands detect activation of flexors, extensors. Only 2 big groups of muscles that are kind of 2 buttons to control all functionality of the hand. And we can detect up to 20 different muscles in forearm, and that is up to 20 buttons to control all functionalities of the hand. So therefore, that's one of the reasons we have faster control. That's it. And yes, different amputations lead to different residual muscles. Different muscles, like each user has different combination of muscles, and that's absolutely not a problem for us. We need only some working muscle, and that will be a button to control the hand or a joystick. That's it for us. If the user has 5, 10, 15 muscles, we can use all of them. Another question, will it be needed in that case?
You guys are able to get fairly granular up to maybe like 20 types of muscles. And it's quite interesting that you guys can adapt to different parts of the body depending on where the needs are.
See, like socket, like stump sockets, that is always individual part of a robotic prosthetic hand, and that is made individually by prosthetic clinics worldwide. And our control system can be installed to all individual stump sockets that if user has some active muscles in the stump, that's it. So our system that's just universal kit for creation of individual stump socket that recognizes muscle activity. That's it.
Whatever that's available from a muscle group, you guys are able to take those signal processing and transmit that information and process it for the motor control. That gives the movability of the fingers, the thumb, the wrist, and the gripping, as well as the strength of the grip. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and that is universal system that can be used and for that will be used later and for leg prosthetics and for exoskeletons and for some rehabilitation devices. So that's just the best is for starting is a hand prosthetic field.
Now, help us understand for this kind of space that you're in. Again, there are quite a bit of competitors. Let's say, for example, the Bion Labs or HAT out of Mexico. I think it's called CalArm, Manro, OI Motion, to name a few. How is your approach, your full stack, including the software and the algos, different from these competitors? And why is your approach maybe superior in terms of the finer motor control?
See, like players you named, they develop mainly robotic hand itself, and they have different robotic hands as like different mechanics. For example, I'm not very well aware of bionic labs you told about, but if I'm not wrong, they have one motor inside that's just open, close, all grip, and all the system inside is mechanical. Like they don't have different grips, so that is totally different solution. And for that solution, obviously, they need only 1 or 2 muscle sensors and detect 1 or 2 big groups of muscles. So just to open and close, they can open and close. Other players in the market, developers of robotic hands, they are mainly hardware companies with basic or no software. And we actually develop prosthetic control systems that can be licensed to them. So we can share our prosthetic control technology to other players. We have own robotic hand. We have own prosthetic control system. And that's kind of different products.
So again, I think if I'm understanding correctly, is that I think both from an approach, but also additional layers. So some of these competitors are really focused on the hardware piece of the robotic movements with, let's say, simple sets of actuators. What you're saying is there's a full stack behind it, and particularly your software system pieces that's able to really translate those signals to the finer points, like you said, maybe 15, 20 different groups of muscles or individual muscles, depending what's available. That is kind of the nuances. Early on, you mentioned that you guys are focusing on the external.
Yes, that is important to make, first of all, external architecture and gain a base of users for that. And then we can add to that architecture implanted devices.
And what's the timing in terms of when you think you'll be able to add the implantable to that architecture?
First implantable devices will be added here during 5 years. That's it. In 3 years, we will have like thousands of users of architecture we have built. And then we can start trials of implanted electronics.
The reality is no one person's needs are going to be exactly the same. And like we talked about, they may have different groups of muscles that are available to work with. So this notion of how do you hyper customize implants in such a way that makes sense? And once the implants are embedded, how is it then powered? Is it through essentially the electrical system within our body, for instance? Or is it through kinetic, or the external socket itself has some power components that is able to pull out those signals into the robotic arm, for instance? Don't forget to visit AstraPerkins.com to register for our next quarterly events. Past and current speakers include Damian Vaughn, former NFL player, Neil Gregory, Chief Thought Leadership Officer at the IFC World Bank, and many more. To register, visit AstraPerkins.com and click on Events.
Yeah. So like there are implants itself, it will be mass manufactured standard devices. And each muscle itself, each residual muscle after the amputation, it can be joystick for remote control of digital world around, control of gadgets, personal computer, anything digital around. And by operation, for example, or as a last stage of amputation itself, surgeon will put on the surface of muscle our devices. Device on the surface of one muscle is a joystick of remote control for digital world around. There can be like 5 different implants on different muscles that are 5 joysticks to control digital world around. And that system will work when prosthetic hand is not far or stump socket is not far. Charging, data receiving, data processing will be embedded in the prosthetic hand itself, and then in prosthetic leg and some other wearable mechatronics. So therefore, that system is like the most convenient field to implement this system is prosthetic industry. And therefore, it will be the birthplace of that kind of technologies.
The example that you gave is ideally it's in the point of when there's a surgical severing of a limb, physicians will actually integrate those joysticks for that control aspects, right? But for those that have been amputated for some time, is there a way to actually have those controls in? Is that a surgical procedure?
Yes, that will be injection. And our first market is the US. For now, We have 2 intense users. In 2 weeks will be FDA registered, and we have 200 users right now in the waiting list, and LOIs with 6 prosthetic clinics and negotiated tests with the biggest net of prosthetic clinics. And after we'll be FDA registered, we can cover more cases step by step. That's it.
Okay, so you're working with hospitals and basically prosthetic centers, and is some of this going to translate into some sort of clinical studies to show kind of the results or nuances as well? And will that be published?
Sure, that won't be kind of scientific research, but that will be kind of not obligatory clinical trials. It will be our internal trial. Will it be published? I'm not sure about that. But we call that pilots and initial market test. That's it.
Yeah. And one quick question that I'll leave with more of a forward-looking question is companies like, let's say, Mechatronics and others of kind of larger medical device companies, what's their interest in this space that you're in, and how do you foresee yourselves working with them if you're not already working with them?
Which companies except of Mechatronics are you interested in? Because just they have different interests. I'll tell you exactly.
So right now you guys have an external architecture. In 5 years' time, you guys are looking to incorporate these implanted neurosensors into the muscle groups. But let's go even further. So there's a research that came out, I think, within the last week where an invasive brain implant and with the help of a particular type of machine learning algorithms is actually able to interpret that region's signal into words that can be typed. So traditionally it used to be that, based on eye movement, blinking, eye tracking effectively, these patients would essentially identify characters or words and make them into sentences. But here it's actually taking neural patterns and actually understanding that this could mean, certain syntax or certain words, for example, and automatically creating that. So taking that as an example, how could we go further into the implants, eventually the human-computer interface like the Neuralink, and think about controlling not just prosthetics, but things around us just simply through our mind? And what is the feasibility from your perspective?
Yeah, so we have different approach a bit. There are so we are talking right now about BCIs. That I assume that will be kind of 20% of all implanted of all variety of implanted electronics humanity will need. And in terms of BCIs, there are 2 main approaches, like to go directly to brain and to see like what neuron structure, how neuron structure there works and and to collect signals from there, or to go through peripheral neural system and to detect signals that mainly consciously were sent by user to machine part. That's it. And that is possible to get the same result with typing by peripheral BCIs and peripheral neural system, but that approach will have I guess and we bet that is better approach because of health safety, of risks in installation and deinstallation procedures because of data infrastructure security and mainly because of better conscious control of which data is sent to the machine. That's it. So from all that perspectives, implants in peripheral nerve system could be better in that implementation as typing. And what can be other implementations in future? That can be like anything connected to digital world. That's just increases our output to digital world. We can send messages, type, share thoughts, kind of 100 times faster with that kind of technologies. And that's only about BCIs. And BCIs is, I assume it's kind of 20%. So there are much more different implementations of implanted electronics to prolong humans' life or fulfill humans' life.
Great. Well, thank you so much for kind of helping us to understand the brain-computer interface, the approach between the invasive in the brain versus, let's say, the peripheral nervous system that you're talking about. And in the larger market, to your point, are more the implantables, like the ones that's on your roadmap. And I think it's very exciting, both from a kind of a therapeutic and a clinical application, but also the potential of extension of exoskeletons and essentially, to your point, the control of things, both digital, but also robotic as well, as we think about control. Translation error. I mean, I think, when we type, our ability to think in our brains and versus the relative speed of our speech or the ability to type, for example, or dictate, is relatively very slow. But so this has a potential of really speeding that up with increased speed, but also hopefully accuracy as well. So with that, I have been joined by Dmytro Gazda, who is the CEO of Esper Bionics. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you a lot.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.